Thank you for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing with Grandma. Welcome back to my studio. As you recall, in the last lesson, I did a sketchbook study of this wolf, but I really wanted to take him a little bit further and make him actually a drawing. So what I did was set up some tape around the edges so that we could create a nice edge and border for him, and I'm going to sketch in the background. I also want to work on the ears and to enlarge them. So as you can see, I created the border value, and that will just help make him stand out a little bit. I enlarged the ears and I adjusted the shape of the eye on the right side because he wasn't quite looking correct. And so I made some minor changes. But I thought it would just be good for me to just get more practice instead of just leaving him as a sketch, but working on more details. So one thing I wanted to do was to study what was happening with that fur, and it demands that I think about that white fluffy area on top of his head and notice that the ends of the hairs are darkened with this black tip. So there's this black stripe, and then it's really light gray, and then there's the ends of the hairs with the black tip. So I wanted to get those in. I needed to adjust the size of the ears, but also to develop a little bit more form that was going on inside of them. And to develop the pencil work and establishing some of the patterns of the black markings and the very dark gray markings on him. One of my goals is to unite those groups of hairs so that they look like they're laying together instead of just creating dark and light areas. You want those hairs to look like they're grouped together, working together, and overlaying, and that takes a lot of practice. Be sure to have in your drawing kit not only regular pencils, but be sure to get a pencil that goes as dark as 6B, which is really at the darker end of the graphite, and it allows such deep, rich, dark black tones so naturally without the shine. And so that's what I'm using now. I'm also going to use a blender in a moment just to soften some of the hairs so that I can have them look a little bit more united with each other. There's such a contrast between the black and white areas on his face that I really feel that a blender would help to unite those hairs. And see how I'm trying to just unite those sections and to keep my strokes going the same direction as the hair would lay. You can tell that I really worked on those ears, and there's some really white fluffy hair in there in the middle of the ears that I really want to show up. So I may work on those a little bit. And right now I'm trying to develop the forms of the black markings on his chest. And then we will remove the tape and do some erasing just to do some final touch-ups. He's still a sketch, but I really think that some drawings make you want to take them a little bit further, and so that's one reason I came back to this one. It just seemed like one that was worth spending a little bit of time in, and it needed a little bit more enhancement of the details and some corrections as well. So I'm going to take off the tape in a moment. First, I want to do some erasing. I'm going to kind of erase some of those hairs on his chin and on the chest and try to create little strokes of hair marks as well. Little highlights. Okay, let's take off the tape and we'll see the border. And it feels, when you use the border tape, it just feels like a little bit more of a finished piece, and it's just kind of a nice touch to add to your drawings. I think I lost some of those whiskers by overworking the drawing. So I'm just going to establish those again, and then we're going to call this one done. I may decide to do this wolf in an oil study. So come back and visit, and you'll see that that study will happen probably in the next couple of weeks. But here is the finished sketch. I wanted also to return to a drawing that I did a few weeks ago of a heron. I was talking about John James Audubon, the famous naturalist illustrator who lived almost 200 years ago, I think. And he was just such a well-known artist and remains so today as one of the best capturer of birds in their natural habitat, and he has just beautiful paintings and illustrations of every kind of bird you can imagine. I would go to the library and see if you could find one of his books of his paintings. But I like to study some of his works because they're so accurate. But the last heron I did was for one of John James Audubon's studies. This one is a photo from the internet that is free for us to use. And as you can see, I started with the oval of the head. I had to find the placement of the beak in order to find the placement of the eye. And now I want to give him some form before I work on that eye detail, because I just need to make sure that everything is placed right, that the angle of that neck turn is correct. They're so elegant and so beautiful. But it's important to get those things placed in the main body shape of the animal you're working on before going to the detail too quickly. But I think it's correct, so now I'm going to lay in the dark values in the eye, the pupil, and then try to get that brow as it leads me into the beak shape that is built right into his head. Just amazing. His beak is quite long and thin, so it's always tempting to make them a little bit wider than they should be. And then there's this nice base underneath his chin. that I will probably have to thin out a little bit, but we'll see. All the feathers that you're working on or the little hairs, again, the pencil techniques that you use really request that you angle your pencil markings the way the hair and feathers would lie. It just adds so much more of a natural quality to your drawings. So really pay attention to the unique surface and texture of that animal itself as you make your decisions for how your lines will be structured. He does have some black markings on the right side of his neck, but I don't really know if they are common to this breed only, or if it's all of these kinds of herons. He's got a beautiful angle to the neck there that leads right to his back, and then in a moment you will see me develop just the top of his feather, his wing structure. But just some nice feathery marks. Helps to add to the quality of his elegance. I don't want to outline this bird. I want everything to be done with value, and it just gives softer edges, which helps to create the form more naturally. I'm just going to thin out the tip of that beak and the cheek area, which is a little bit lighter. And here he is, finished study. Thank you for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing and Painting with Grandma.